I just finished recording a voiceover for a tour of this road trip that I'm going on. It's nothing very fancy. In fact, it's a little bit sloppy, but I did my best and I tried to throw it together because the route keeps changing, so I can't do a big, complicated graphical overlay. That being said, I hope it does the trick. It's a big trip, and I'd love to tell you about it. Check this out.
On my first trip, I traveled for 3 weeks and saw riding locations in California, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and Idaho. That's the trip where I discovered Durango, the town that I can't seem to stop talking about, and that I now call home. My second trip took me across the southern United States to North Carolina. I drove and rode through California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina. And I made my way back home through Kansas and Colorado. That was a long one. Let's take a look at this road trip and see where the stops are. We'll be messing around in Google Earth, in Google Sheets, and also in Google My Maps. Jumping back into the globe, let's start out with Durango. I'm going to be starting my trip here in Durango and not doing any riding here because this is the beginning of the trip, but this will be where I launch and head out to Salt Lake City. I'll be driving right through Moab but not stopping because Salt Lake City is my first major stop, where I'll be riding at Corner Canyon and Round Valley. Should be fun. These two are both places that are supposed to be some pretty great trails, and not that I know that much about them, they promise to be a good time on the bike. I've ridden in Salt Lake before, and I've always enjoyed it, so why should this be any different, right? From Salt Lake City, I'll be heading up to Helena, Montana. I was originally going to visit Bozeman, but the Banktail Divide trail system is kind of down for the count, and so I'm going to be spending my time in the hills just south of Helena, and I've heard good things about these places. I don't know much about it. Much like many of the stops on my trip, I just don't know that much about the hills, but I'm going to check them out anyway and see how it turns out. After that, I'm headed out to South Dakota to visit Spearfish. Spearfish actually has a lot of different riding areas nearby, and we can take a look at those here in Google My Maps because I've got a lot of them outlined. Officially, Spearfish has the Black Hills, which is kind of a region. You can see this shape right here. This is the Black Hills. There's also an area here called the Black Hills, but the Black Hills is considered to be the region. There are many different trail systems here to explore, and I'll be checking out as many of them as I can. But there's a lot to choose from, and as you can see, the terrain is varied and really complex. There's a lot going on here. Past Spearfish, I was originally supposed to hit Minneapolis, Minnesota, but the person that I was going to visit there isn't available, so I'm going to be heading up to Duluth. Now, I would have never checked out Duluth, but it turns out that it's got quite the mountain bike following. There's a few trail systems in town that look to be very promising. I'm looking forward to checking a lot of these out. One of which is Spirit Mountain. Spirit Mountain has a pretty good reputation in mountain biking circles, and I'm looking forward to playing around here. And then a little bit further north, we've got Brewer Park, so there's a little bit to choose from in town here. Right on the banks of the Great Lakes. After Duluth, we're looking at Copper Harbor. And Copper Harbor has been recommended to me by a group of people. Many, many people have recommended Copper Harbor to me. Apparently, it's quite the place to ride. On Trail Forks, we're looking at a lot of different trails in a very, very small area. The town itself is pretty small, but there's all sorts of shuttle services, and apparently it's a pretty interesting place to hit the trails. So, just like every other stop on this trip, I'm really looking forward to it. And I've heard it's filled with some really interesting dirt. Past Copper Harbor, that's where I cross into Canada at a place called Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie is right on the American-Canadian border, just north of Michigan, and it's got a lot to offer as well. Apparently this town has been putting a lot of effort into attracting mountain bikers, so I'm kind of optimistic about the way this is going to turn out. After that, I'll be heading east on the highway to Sudbury, Canada. And just southwest of town, there is the Walden Cross Country Trail System. One of the locals has agreed to meet me here and do a little bit of riding. I'm really looking forward to that as well. This is a middle-sized trail system that looks like it has a lot of different stuff going on. I'm looking forward to playing around here and exploring the dense wilderness, finding out how different it is from Colorado, California, and Utah. After Sudbury, I'll be heading down into America again, into northern New York State, where I'll be checking out a town called Ellicottville. And that's a lot of syllables for one town. They have a mountain called Hidden Valley Resort, and Hidden Valley Resort looks like it's got a lot going on. This is a big park. So I can't wait to figure out what this place has in store. But it promises to be a pretty interesting and pretty busy day on the mountain. I was originally supposed to head down through Toronto and then Montreal, but nothing against Toronto and Montreal, but these places just don't have the same offerings that northern New York State does. Northern New York State has the Finger Lakes, and it can get pretty hilly, and I'll be able to pass through Rochester and have lunch, and I'm really looking forward to this whole area. It should be really beautiful. But then I'll be jumping back up into Canada, and I'll be checking out Bromont, or Bromont, or Bromont, or something like that. I'm going to mispronounce 2/3 of the names on this trip. But Bromont has Bromont Mountain, and Bromont Mountain is a full-fledged, full-featured bike park. It's got quite a bit going on. Look at the density of those trails. I mean, I'm not going to be able to fit this all into a day, but I'm going to give it a shot. And it also promises to be pretty darn beautiful. Look at all those trails. It just goes on forever. I mean, that's a big mountain, you know? So I'll be playing around here for a while and spending a day trying not to hurt myself. After Bromont, I'll be heading up to Quebec City, and Quebec City is going to be a bit of a drive. That's where my friend Josh is going to join me, and we are going to be hitting a variety of bike parks. Let's jump back over to the spreadsheet here so that I can see the list. I'm going to be pronouncing these horribly. Sentier du Molly, Mont Saint-Anne, Vallée Bras du Nord, and Les Messies de Charlevoix. Now, those are only pronounceable by dolphins. But there's a lot going on here. These places are dense. All of them are. I mean, there's just tons and tons of riding here. And we probably won't hit all of these parks because I don't know how you could. I mean, I am scoping out 4 days here, but Josh and I are going to figure out what we want to hit and how we want to hit it. And some might be better than others. So we're going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out what the best places to hit are. And you know, look at that. They're kind of scattered around the outside of Quebec City. So we've got a lot of options. I'm guessing we'll stay right here in town or somewhere close to town, and you know, maybe even spend half a day in the city and check things out there. But looking forward to this leg of the trip. You know, I've never been out to this part of the country before, this part of the continent, I should say. And I'm kind of excited about what it has to offer, and I'm really happy that I get to share it with Josh because he's a great rider. He's a really good friend. It's going to be a pretty good time. After Quebec, we're going to go down and hit Burke. Burke is in Vermont, and it's the home of Burke Mountain, which doesn't say much to you, but it's actually a fairly well-known mountain in the area for skiing, and I'm hoping that it's just as good for mountain biking. They'll be open to the public while we're there, and we're actually going to be hitting this part of the country towards the end of their riding season for mountain bikes because they close pretty early, generally around October, so that they can get ready for the winter ski season. So we'll be catching them right at the end of their riding seasons. After Burke, I'm heading down to Bartlett and Conway. Bartlett and Conway are a pair of towns that have a couple of fun little mountains to ride, and they're kind of tucked away up in the hills in New Hampshire. This is the part of the trip, you know, New England is the part of the trip where I'm not just looking forward to the riding, but also the countryside. Not only that, but we're going to be there towards the end of the year, which means that we might see a little bit of the changing of the leaves. From Bartlett, we'll be checking out Killington, Vermont. Killington, Vermont is a place that you may have heard of. They've got a pretty decent-sized ski mountain there, and the riding is supposed to be pretty epic. Once again, don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm kind of excited about what kind of riding I'm going to be able to do. After Killington, I'm headed to the Atlantic Ocean. I'm just going to hit this little town called Newburyport. This is the spot that I chose to touch the Atlantic Ocean. On my previous trips, I've come pretty close to the Atlantic, but I've never actually touched it, so I'm forcing myself to get out there and actually see the ocean this time. That way I will have driven to the East Coast. But while in Newburyport, it's just north of Boston, which is right down here, I'll be able to check out the Vietnam trails. Now, these were featured in a Brian Kennedy BKXC video during his 50-state shred, and I'm kind of excited about that. I've heard that the trails are pretty darn fun, so this is going to be a pretty awesome stop. From my day off in Newburyport, I'm going to be heading southwest, and I was originally going to stay in Peekskill and hit Blue Mountain Park. That is now a backup, because I'm going to be staying in Vernon so that I can hit this other trail system called Mountain Creek Resort. If I head down here and take a look at Mountain Creek Resort, it looks like a pretty comprehensive trail system. There's a lot going on there. Check that out. And that's a big plate of pasta, isn't it? It's got some pretty advanced stuff. I mean, look at all of these red lines. This is pretty nuts, man. Bob Gnarly. What a great trail name. And Deceit. I mean, boy, they're really messing with my head here. But this should be a challenge, to say the least. It doesn't look like a particularly large ski area, but I do think that it's going to be filled with some stuff that's really going to kick my ass. I might learn a thing or two while I'm out here. As I travel west, I'll be heading to State College, Pennsylvania. Now, the town in and of itself, I'm sure, is very nice, but the reason I'm visiting is because of these formations just south of town. There's a lot going on down here. This is a really interesting geological formation, and it's just covered with trails. You can see there's a lot of trails in there in this area. State College is up here on the left, and down here, Cooper's Gap, Galbraith Gap, there's a lot of stuff here, and from what I understand, it's really, really fun to ride. I don't really know what kind of trails they are, but they look pretty cool. I'm actually just really excited about being able to ride this really unique terrain. And it's also a great stop on the way back, heading west. After State College, I'll be heading to the Toledo area, where I'll be hitting Sylvania. Sylvania is where a buddy of mine lives. I don't think I'm going to be doing any riding in Toledo, or actually, Toledo's right here. Toledo's right here, and Sylvania's just to the left of it. But this is Cincinnati down here. I don't have the names turned on. Cincinnati actually has Ray's Indoor Mountain Bike Park, and I might have to stop there for a day. You know, that might be pretty good. There's Ray's right there. But look at this place. This is ridiculous. Yeah, I might have to check this out. I mean, this is just too good to pass up. Anybody who knows Ray's is going to understand that, like, it's kind of a place that you don't say no to. It's a really wacky ride. So, yeah, I might have to stop at Ray's for a day, or at least a half a day. But then I'll be heading out to Sylvania, and I'll be visiting my friend in Sylvania and having a pretty good time there. And I had a couple of different places picked out near Sylvania to ride, but I'm hearing that this DTE Energy Foundation Trail that's a little bit north of town, near the town of Chelsea, is supposed to be an amazing trail system. Put together by the local electric concern, I guess. There's supposed to be really incredible trails all over this countryside here. And I really don't know what to expect from this one either. Do I know what to expect from any of these things? I mean, geez. Come on, Steve, do your homework. But it does look pretty incredible. People are really playing this up, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to check it out for a day. After Sylvania and Toledo, I'm heading west to Davenport. Davenport is in Iowa, and it's right on the Mississippi River. And there's a little trail system right next door called Sunderbrook Park. Now, this isn't a place that I would typically stop and ride. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just kind of on the way home, and I was trying to find places that had trail systems. That's why I'm not staying in some of the larger cities that are nearby, is because they just don't have any big trails. But this Sunderbrook Park is supposed to have a few things going on. You can see that it's got a little bit. It's got a black, it's got a couple of reds, like, oh, that's a jump line. I don't do jump lines. But no more kings. Oh my. So this should be an interesting place to check out. I'm kind of stoked about it. But as I continue west, I'll be heading from Davenport to Louisville. Louisville features Platte River State Park, and from what I understand, it's a pretty killer place to ride. But the place I'm really looking forward to checking out is Lewis and Clark Park. This is a tiny little trail system. It doesn't look that big. That's the whole thing. It's not gigantic. In fact, it's got one main trail, and that one main trail is 4 miles long. It's a little tiny place, but people tell me it's incredible. And you just do multiple laps. I mean, it does have a little bit of vert. Look at that. You know, it does definitely has some up and down. So I'm gonna check this place out, and it sounds like it might be pretty interesting. But yeah, people apparently do multiple laps here and ride over and over again. Maybe I'll stay right here in Omaha somewhere and be able to get a good night's rest after a good half day of doing 3 laps of Lewis and Clark. After Lewis and Clark, I'm looking at Colorado Springs. It's going to be a big drive, but once I land in Colorado Springs, I'll be able to visit my friend who lives there, and she's going to show me some of the trails that are just west of town. There is a lot to see here. All the trails are up here in the mountains, and yeah, this is where the Rockies start. And as you can see, it's big. You know, there's a bunch of stuff to hit here, and it kind of goes on forever. So is that Pikes Peak right there? It might be, but it's almost too big. You know, I could spend a week just here. So there's a lot to see, and I'm looking forward to hitting it all. As I travel west, I'll be heading to Buena Vista in Colorado. Now, Buena Vista is a great cycling town. I've never ridden here, but everybody talks about it. It's supposed to be pretty awesome. It's definitely got some hills. Look at that. You know, it's got a lot going on. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to see what it has to offer. It's got this trail that's called Vitamin B, which actually, honestly, kind of scares the crap out of me. It looks like a pretty advanced trail, so I don't know if I'm going to be hitting that because I'll be alone. If I had somebody with me, I might consider it. Buena Vista has Whipple Midland trail systems, and you know, they've got some fun stuff going on. Here's Vitamin B right up here, this big red line, and that is a pretty aggressive downhill. 1,900 feet of descent in 6 miles, but it's supposed to be really rocky and challenging, so I might be just sticking to this, because I'm not out here to hurt myself. I'm out here to have a good time. I'm headed home to Durango. Looking forward to getting back to the house and seeing the family and having a good time riding my local trails again. But I will be putting it into probably one of the biggest adventures I'll ever be on in my life. Definitely the longest. Either way, Durango's a great place to land, and there's plenty to do here. I mean, just look at these mountains. They just go on forever, and they're just too beautiful and way too much fun.
Well, that was the adventure. Top to bottom, 6 weeks on the road, 7,000 miles, plus a little bit more probably, because I'm not counting like getting to the trailheads and stuff. That being said, it's going to be a big trip, and I'm going to share as much of it as I can with you guys. Thanks for coming along. If you have any questions, post them down below, because I've got a lot of different places to stop, and I don't quite know where I'm riding yet. Thanks for everything. I'll see you when I see you. Take it easy.